Hello, everyone, and welcome today. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Mike Ferguson. And Mike is the Managing Director of Intelligence Business Strategies Limited. He's an independent IT industry analyst and consultant that specializes in BI analytics and data management. And just to give you an idea of how far Mike goes back in the whole BI analytics space, he's been in it for over 40 years. He's worked with dozens of consulting companies on BI analytics, data strategy, data enterprise and architecture. Way back, he was the co-founder of Cod and Date, inventors of the relational model. He was the chief architect of Teradata and the Teradata DBMS. And he actually is the chair of Big Data London, which is the fastest growing data analytics conference in Europe. So today, Mike's going to talk to us about maximizing the value of your BI and machine learning models in a data-driven enterprise. And then I will do a little bit of a demo of how some of these principles come into play within our product and metric instance. So thank you for joining us, Mike, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Marius. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I want to talk to you about how we can maximize the value from everything that's being created within our enterprise around BI and analytics to really make a difference. And so what I want to do is just start off with a kind of where are we in the data and analytics sort of space today, and the challenges with that, kind of current state. And then what's kind of needed to get us beyond that state to really maximize the value of BI and machine learning models, in order to get our business into, real smart operations, if you like. And then, why is it that we need to publish and organize, what we're creating, whether that's BI reports or machine learning models or automation bots and whatnot, and make them available and kind of create a catalog in and around this. And what I'll talk about, creating a sort of marketplace, if you like, for people to find what's available to them so that we can deploy and maximize the value that comes from it and integrate it into our everyday operations. So let's get moving. If you look at, for many years, companies have built their, if you like, insights that they get out of data around data warehousing. Probably over 30 years now, data warehousing's been around. And, idea there was to kind of take data just from transactional systems, structured data, clean it, integrate it, bring it into data warehouses, maybe subsets of it on into data marts, and allow people to query and report and analyze on that data from BI tools, which have obviously now been made available in your browser or on your mobile device as well. But, for most organizations, they didn't build one monolithic data warehouse. They built multiple, maybe for different parts of their value chain, whether it's for finance or sales and marketing or some aspect of your business operations, to analyze and look at data there. And so what that meant is that for a lot of organizations, they opened up to have multiple BI tools in different parts of the business. Many of which, so examples of which are sort of listed here, which would have access to one or more of these, underlying data warehousing systems that were, and data marts that were created. And so people were, doing their own thing with these different tools, producing reports, dashboards, stories, or doing ad hoc analysis in some of the search-oriented tools, for example, that are in that space. But we've gone way beyond that, really, in the sense that we're no longer into just structured data coming out of transactional systems. We're into all kinds of new data types and new data sources, which continue to grow dramatically within organizations, many of them coming from outside, not just from inside. But it could include things like machine-generated data, such as things like clickstream coming in from customers who are clicking on mobile phones, touching their phone screens or clicking on a mouse as they traverse your website. Could be infrastructure log files, could be IoT data coming in of industrial IoT equipment, and maybe part of your operations, or it could be consumer IoT where sensors are built into products that you create and sell, and you're collecting data on the usage of those products to understand behavior and use of those products. Equally, also, we've seen an explosion in human-generated data with all kinds of opinions being created in inbound email, for example, or on web chat when you're talking to customer service representatives, or it could be even on social networks where people are voicing opinions about maybe different aspects of products or about a brand. And people are interested in that, want to understand it. Much of it, of course, being unstructured text in many cases. Also, even voice data being recorded, which could of course be converted into text and analyzed that way. And of course, there's also all kinds of data that we can either buy in from vertical industry specific data providers, or alternatively get for free from open government websites. Data.gov in the US is a huge one. Every government in the European Union has an open government data website giving away free data. So all of this going into the melting pot, and because of all of that data, we're way beyond data warehousing. And just take customer, for example, pulling in way more than just who are my customers. I want to know what they're saying, I want to know their interests are, their hobbies. I want to know what their online behavior is, so their clickstream behavior. I want to see every interaction, whether it's emails, web chats, clicks, everything. I want to see it all in a time series. So you take that into account. Before you know it, you're into way beyond just data from transactional systems and master data. We're into, opinions and so from social data sources. We're into behavior from clickstream or product usage if they're buying products with sensors in. We're into interactions, and we want it all to have a much richer understanding of a customer and as close to real time as we can get it, so that we can become far more personal in customer experiences, for example. So that whole slew of data has ended up being analyzed, in multiple analytical systems, many of which are not just data warehouses. We're doing it on cloud storage with, say, Spark, for data science purposes, maybe graph databases, maybe that's fraud related, or it could be cybercrime related associated with that. Streaming data coming in, analyzing all of that. So it's not just data warehouse. We now have multiple analytical workloads on multiple analytical systems. And so for many organizations today, those systems could be on premises, they could be on the cloud, or a mix of both. But certainly you can get all of those on the cloud today, not necessarily having to install them all on premises. And that's also kicked off a whole bunch of data science initiatives over the last decade. And we have seen a frenzy in this space, with companies moving to buy new technologies, new libraries, new algorithms, kind of leapfrogging each other at incredible pace over the last decade. And so we've seen going from just basic Jupyter notebooks, which are still very popular these days, to full-blown data science workbenches, the likes of SageMaker or Google's Vertex AI platform or IBM's Watson or whatever, is certainly seeing major tool sets, if you like, being made available to data scientists. And again, much like the BI, self-service BI area, we're now seeing different parts of the business with their own budgets buying their own tools. And so we see a mix of different tools around the organization, for different data science initiatives, working on different analytical systems that I spoke about a moment ago. And all of that, all happening, to build models for various purposes in various parts of the business that can then be deployed. And so, but in terms of deployment, it's not just a case of we only do this in the big data world. We're deploying models to run in real time on streaming data. We're deploying models, yes, in data science on big data platforms like cloud storage or Hadoop. We're even deploying models into traditional data warehouses and into lake houses in order to be able to do in database analytics and take advantage of invoking those in SQL queries, for example. So data science is busy working across these different analytical systems and workloads and deploying these things. Similarly, business intelligence has gone not just into data warehousing, where I started the presentation, but now spread to be able to start querying data in cloud storage through SQL or connecting into big data systems like Hadoop, whether that's on premises or in the cloud with a SQL interface, or even using SQL on live streaming data to understand data as it's actually being created and be able to analyze it and report on it in real time. So a whole ton of new activity happened over the last decade. And given that situation, what are the challenges then? And what's kind of needed to really maximize the value of everything that's been created there? Well, I think the first challenge is that this is all fractured. We've got a range of different tools where people are developing things in different parts of the business on different kinds of analytical systems, maybe that are optimized for different kinds of analytical workloads. And so we've got a kind of siloed setup, where what's happening in one department or one system is not necessarily visible to what's happening in a different department on a different analytical system. And there's no real coordination and organization of everything being developed across the enterprise in any particular way. And so it's quite normal, people with one tool unaware of what's happening and being created in other tools, whether that's to do with BI reports or dashboards or stories, or whether it's to do with data science and machine learning models. And so the unawareness means that we don't get as much reuse as we could, and probably more reinvention than we should. And also unawareness means lack of integration of what's being created into business processes, into applications and websites and whatnot, to really put it to work to get maximum value out of it. And also there's issues around data as well, being spread out across edge, multiple clouds and on premises. So if you kind of look at it, all of this activity going on, but still I think today, we're seeing the vast majority of use of all of this in a tactical level, the middle tier, if you like, on this chart. And I don't think that's enough for business. And certainly what I'm also seeing is that these different levels are not, they're not aligned, they're not integrated, so that they're working together, so that people at different levels within the organization are working together on the same strategic goals necessarily. And I think certainly when I talk to some of my customers, especially at executive level, they really believe it should look more like this. I really need to maximize the use of this stuff at operations levels where there's thousands and thousands of decisions being made every day, but also to use it at more at strategic levels, as well as in the middle tier where it seems to have grown and sort of consolidated. But they want it integrated and aligned on common goals rather than everybody doing their own thing, so to speak. And if you look at recent CEO surveys, I took this one from a CEO survey done in late 2021, so not that long ago, and you can quite clearly see that post-pandemic, CEOs are firmly focused on customer, really going after better customer experiences, stronger customer relationships. Don't just give me customer intelligence. I want to build relationships with customers out of this, because keeping customers is just as important as getting new ones. And as a real, front office customer priority there. Yes, of course, they want to improve efficiency and help reduce costs as well. And the two together would hopefully widen their profit margins. But what they really want then if they're going to go and get that customer focus, for example, they want mass execution across the business to be able to pull on that rope, you know, where in operations, where in the middle tier, where at strategic levels, can they all contribute to improving customer experience, building customer relationships? What insights and analytics can I use in what parts of the business to help do that? So they're all contributing to the same goal. And so, you know, that's a big requirement, I think, given this kind of post-pandemic priorities and the desire to kind of get people working together rather than a sort of fractured approach, is to really get alignment with everything that's being developed with business strategy and being able to figure out where to deploy stuff so that people at different levels can all start, you know, putting their hands on the same rope and pulling in the same direction. So it makes you then think, well, you know, what's in the business strategy? What are the strategic business priorities? What are the outcomes that we're trying to improve on? Have we got sight of what our company business strategy is, not just our departmental one or our line of business, but what's the corporate business strategy look like? And if I was to then, you know, look at the strategic business objectives in there and the strategic priorities, you know, you then want to say, okay, well, what are the BI and the analytical models, etc., that are in play if the company is going to achieve a specific goal? So, for example, if I did want to improve customer engagement, well, then exactly what's in play, you know, and where in the organization should it be in play in order to help the company as a whole improve customer engagement? Because that's not just going to be in a marketing department or in a sales department. That could be in distribution, it could be in finance, it could be in inventory management, it could be right across the business that we need a number of things to be lined up and be able to work together to help contribute to that goal. Similarly, if I wanted to reduce fraud, well, what's being produced and where in order to help do that? It's not just real-time fraud. How do I spot a fraud ring? You know, who's working on that? What kind of fraud? So there's a number of analytical initiatives for that. Similarly, also, if I'm trying to optimize part of your operations, whether that's a manufacturing process or a supply chain or something like that, again, what have we got and what are we deploying and where is it being deployed in order to be able to achieve that business goal? And have we got sight of that, given that all of the stuff that's being built is happening in lots of different tools? And some of this stuff is going to be real time. Some of it's going to be on demand. And it could be, you know, really need to scale. A lot of things calling it, you know, to give you on demand. Think about all the mobile apps being used by customers. You want personalized experience to happen right in their mobile phone. There's, you know, tens of thousands of concurrent users could be using those apps at any one time. Got to scale this thing. Could be happening in, you know, big data environments, you know, whether that's complex data or high velocity data that we need to work on. And some of it could be happening on traditional data warehousing, but it's all of it together that we're interested in. It's not, you know, one or the other, it's all of it. But it's alignment with strategy, which is the big deal. And then go further, push this into your core business processes so that we really are able to leverage it at the point of use, you know, within parts of our business process, and even change how we operate, leveraging this kind of capability to get maximum value out of it. That's what I think people want. They want to go, not just go look at a report, but be guided, you know, have automatic monitoring of what's going on around the business, and then have alerts, recommendations, guide different parts of the business based upon what's just happened so that they take the right kind of actions. Or maybe there's a series of actions or a complete chain reaction across the enterprise. And it's going further. We're now into the world of automation. I mean, the size of AI-driven automation, that marketplace is massive. You know, we're into, I think the numbers I saw were somewhere in the order of $600 billion over the next a couple of years, and the amount of labor that we can potentially save through automation. and using automation. This is over and above just providing models to give me predictions and recommendations. This is completely automated activities, which could be driven by AI. So, if you look at this whole thing, you kind of say, well, the focus over the last decade's been all about development, and it's currently kind of fractured and it's sitting across multiple tools and systems. But I think what I'm seeing from my clients is they're saying, okay, I want to industrialize this, fix what's going on, join things up, and really make this decade the era of usage so that we put stuff to work and get it deployed where it needs to be deployed to really maximize the value coming out of it, whether those are alerts, whether those are recommendations, whether it's automatic actions on the back of real-time data, or some combination of all of it that allows potentially thousands of decisions to contribute to a common goal. And so then, well, what do we need to do to make that happen? We need to publish these things and organize them so people know what's out there. If it's all being created in lots of different tools, gotta somehow tell people what exists so they don't go rebuild it again, spend all that money and reinvent. We've got to get beyond the fact that we've had freedom and we've created a whole bunch of valuable stuff that's out there, but if you can't see what's being built and you can't organize it and understand what's out there, how are you going to maximize the value coming from it? So to me, this is a really big deal. If I'm looking at an objective like reducing fraud, I want to know, well, what is out there that we have in different parts of the business that can contribute to reducing fraud or to improving customer experience? And that's not just machine learning models and BI. It's also the growth in bots that are being created. Like we're now seeing bots being deployed for operational use. Obvious examples being chatbots and things in customer service, but it's gone way beyond that. RPA and everything happening there, automatic decisions and actions on the back of all of that. All of that's now growing and set to grow rapidly over the next 4 or 5 years. We need to be able to organize all that stuff. So ultimately, what we should be able to do is go somewhere and say, well, organize this stuff so that it's business ready, so people can go in a bit like a canteen here and just pick what they need in order to help maximize the value in their part of the business, but all as part of a bigger plan, if you like, all as part of a bigger program, that's designed in order to achieve common goals. That's what they want. And so this whole idea of an enterprise analytics marketplace, where I can go somewhere and find ready-made analytical products, which are available to use, fully describe what they do, they're tagged and organized, make them easy to know, how to find them, easy to be able to share and deploy, to start using them and putting them to work across the enterprise. So ultimately, if someone's sitting in your organization with a business problem, you want them to be able to say, well, what BI and what machine learning models and what recommenders are out there and what bots are out there that I could potentially use to really get going to make a difference with its business problem. What's readily available, given that it's all being created in a range of different tools. So they need somewhere to go to find those things. I need a marketplace to be able to go and look for this stuff. And so the kinds of things that we're going to see in that marketplace, it's way beyond just the odd BI report or the odd dashboard. I want to know what KPIs are out there, what predictive models are out there, what recommenders are out there, what actions are available out there. Is there any plans? Is there any bots? This is just going to grow and grow. And if there's new tools out there that's going to create some of these, that's even more tools in the enterprise. Now, we can't expect somebody to log in and out of every tool in the enterprise to find out what's available. We've got to be able to go somewhere and see these things that are being created and organize them so that we can understand, how complete are we in reducing fraud, or how complete are we in trying to improve on customer experience, or in building customer relationships? Is there any new stuff that's being created that we should be aware of that helps improve on where we are right now? Got to know that. Got to be able to have that available to us. We've got to be able to search for the stuff. We've got to be able to know, can I trust it? Is it being rated? Are these things that are being developed being rated? Not much point using them if people don't value them and don't think they're any good. We want to know who owns them. Maybe I haven't got permission to use them. Maybe I need to request permission to use them. But if I want to use this thing like a report, or like a machine learning model, is there any other things that I should know about that are related to that, which would strengthen it even further? I need to find this stuff, and I need somewhere to go and be able I'll be able to see that. People should shop for it, and not just shop for data and then go build value on top of that, which of course is important. But when they produce these reports and dashboards and models and bots and everything else going on out there, they too need to be approved, added into a marketplace so that people can find them. And so you incrementally build this up so that new problems that come along, you should be able to go in here. If you can find 60%, 70%, 80% of what you need ready-made, I mean, how fast are you going to be to deploy and get things moving? It's going to be much more effective. So we really kind of need to know what's out there so that we can then put it to work, so that we can bring what's out there, if you like, the piece, all of the services in the middle here, and then deploy them in the right parts of the business, in different business processes, to really get, if you like, an artificially intelligent business, to get the smarts really driving the business in every part where it needs to. If you like, get the blood to the veins of the business, get the intelligence out there. And that really means that, there's all of these different departments. There's people working at different levels of the enterprise in each of these areas of the business. And we need this portal or marketplace or catalog, whatever you want to call that. And we need to be able to tell people, well, here's what's available. What do you need, and where should it be deployed across the enterprise? So it should be that marketplace should be right in the middle, so that people can see it and then can say, okay, well, we're trying to improve customer relationships. Well, what is there in here that can do that, and where should they be deployed? Should that be deployed in marketing? Should it go into service? Should it go into distribution? What goes where? Should it happen at operations level? Should it be going in and being used at strategic level? Should it be used at middle management level? And how are we going to deploy it? So that we can see how we're going to put it to work across the enterprise. And align it with strategies, so that there's a whole slew of things that we've developed that are then being deployed in different parts of the business to achieve the same goal. So that gradually over time, you put more and more of it in, more and more of it to work. What you should hopefully see is that, that needle on that business outcome just getting better and better by improving it. You should be able to then understand that you're seeing what you're building really making a difference to overall business performance. So, in that regard, then, integrating all of this into our business operations and managerial processes is critical. It's not just about all of these great technologies that we can go and build this stuff. That's only half the story. I've got to be able to put it to work and know how to put it to work and deploy it. And so if I'm looking at a core business process like this one, which could be order to cash, I want to know what goes where, which tasks need what artifacts, whether those are reports, whether those are machine learning models, whether those are bots of some kind that automate particular tasks. Is the task performed by a person? Is it performed by an app? In which case the app needs the bot, the app needs the machine learning model or the recommender. But I've got to know this. I've got to figure it out in order to see how I can maximize the value that's coming out of what we're creating in order to really make a difference to overall business performance. So I guess to wrap up then, what we're kind of saying is, yeah, we can go and produce all this stuff, whether it's happening at the edge, whether it's happening on premises in your data center, or whether it's happening in multiple clouds. And you can build all of these things. But somehow or other, we better get it organized, get them published, put them in the middle and say what goes where, and is in which applications should and processes, whether they're front office, back office, or some part of your operations, needs what, so that we can put more hands on that rope and say pull in the same direction in order to make those outcomes improve, achieve those strategic business goals, so that people can gradually see that what we're building is really having a significant effect, as more and more stuff becomes available. And if stuff isn't having an effect, that's also good to know. So that we can say, okay, this didn't work. So, maybe we need to build over here or whatever, and keep chipping away at those, at improving those outcomes in order to really get a strategy deployed and working within an enterprise. So I hope that gives you an idea of what I think needs to happen, to create a truly intelligent business, to really get maximum value out of it. It's not enough to just develop. We really, really have to put it to work. And I think, in my mind, this kind of marketplace or portal or catalog, whatever you want to call that, is central to be able to do that. So people know what's available to them, so that it can be deployed, and we can industrialize this and make it work for you, for your business. So with that, I'll pass it back to Marius and say thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And please remember to put your questions for Mike in the Q&A box. And that way, after I do a brief demo here, we'll bring him back online, and we can address some questions that you may have on the great presentation that he showed us. So next part of the webinar, I'm going to show you a little bit about how some of these ideas that Mike shared with you, the key imperative to be able to really bring everything together, all these different analytics, machine language models, AI assets, traditional BI assets, kind of bring it under a single pane of glass and be able to really align it with objectives, with stages in the process, whatever it is that you need in order for users to discover that content and to be able to maximize the use of it and make sure that they really understand how all these pieces can fit together to address specific business objectives. So with that, let me share my screen, and we will take a look here at this. So let's take, first of all, what I'm going to be showing you is the metric insights application, and we are basically a BI portal that is used to drive engagement and apply governance across all of the BI and analytics assets in your enterprise, whether those be things that are like everything from spreadsheets that are shared broadly within the organization, to BI tools like Tableau and Power BI, dashboards and reports, to machine language models, access to bots, access to any other kinds of access to machine language data sets, so that really everyone, whether they be the business user who's trying to understand, what are the assets that are available to me, what do we have to address a particular area, or the analyst who wants to know, well, do I need to build out a new model here, or does one already exist that addresses the area I'm trying to study, that I can use either as a starting point or simply to answer my question. So really enabling self-service, if you like, across the entire universe of users that you have within the enterprise. So what you're seeing here is the application. Every single analytics asset is shown as a tile here in the middle. So you can see that, you can see the type of object that it is. And then on the left-hand side, there's an organizational paradigm. So I have favorites that I can, find just the things that I've starred and added to my favorites folder. I can also have full curated sets of content within specific folders that are shared with me. And then there's categories of content that I can browse and explore. And the idea is that for any one of these visualizations, I can have things like certification that tell me that, this is a trusted piece of content. I can have extended metadata that's available for it. I see kind of a small image here that if I'm interested in exploring further, I can click on it. And then I'm taken into a preview image of this content. And then I can be taken to the content directly that I might want to work with. So in this particular case, I think it's a Power BI dashboard that I'm interacting with, but it can be any type of content. So in this case, it's Power BI. And then, I might have a particular Excel spreadsheet, some asset that's been published by some group that I want to be able to consume, and I can do that here as well, and see it and download the file and work with it. So with that sort of general overview of the Metric Insights as a portal, I want to focus a little more about the data science assets and walk you through a bit of what are some of the capabilities around managing those models, those assets that you've created within your data science group, in order to really take them out of the darkness that often exists, where you're a data science professional. Data scientists will create maybe a model that they might initially sort of socialize it with a small group of people, but then 6 months, 9 months later, nobody remembers about it and nobody knows about it, and some other group goes and rebuilds that or makes decisions without the benefit of that particular model. So how do we really bring that up to a point where everyone can be aware and can discover the things that are relevant to be able to answer a particular business question, and to understand what are we doing to support these business goals and strategies. So if we look at this data science assets folder, I have a few examples. So you can see here, for example, I might have an RShiny application that is, a Jupyter notebook, a TensorFlow model, maybe even a data set, right? And all of these things that come from different tools, but they're all brought together under this single pane of glass that is this portal, right? And if I go and look and I say, well, let me take a look at this customer demographics, this RShiny app, just like in the example that I showed you with the Power BI, I'm seeing here a extended metadata. In fact, here you can see one of the things that Mike talks about. We've aligned this particular visualization. We've tagged it with a particular corporate goal that we're trying to achieve, which is reduced customer churn. We've got some other, identify what enterprise KPIs are pulled in here. So I want to know that, hey, this contains sales, units, whatever else it might contain. I've got ownership information, description. I've got engagement information. I've got some custom field information telling me, does it contain PII data, what level of sensitivity it might have, any number of customized metadata captions you might want to have for any particular asset can be accommodated, right? So I've got all of the context around this asset to understand, what is the data encapsulated and how should I be using this? And then if I want to, I can again, click into it and then consume that content live here. So here I'm working with that RShiny application live, and I can analyze it. So it really turns that data science RShiny object, instead of it being something that is sitting off in a silo separate from everything else that your users are using, or maybe most users are in Tableau or Power BI, and then they have to remember, oh yeah, there's also that site which has all those RShiny apps. It's all under the same umbrella. They don't really need to think about what kind of tool it is that they're using. They can just take advantage of it. Furthermore, if they want to say, well, geez, here I can see this is reducing customer churn, but to Mike's question that he posed, what else do we have that is reducing customer churn? What are the other things that we have? And what is reducing customer churn about anyway? So when I click on this, I can see definitions. I can see, here's the definition of what our goal is, to reduce customer churn by 30% from 2020 levels by 2023. So that sort of says what that's about, a description, whatever, who are the owners around that particular sort of key initiative. And then if I click on this, I can then immediately be taken to a search where I can see all of the other assets that we have, irrespective of what type they are, that also are aligned with that particular objective. So I can see here that, there are 2 Microsoft Power BI dashboards that around reduction of customer churn. I can see all the information around that. I can see that, I've got a Jupyter notebook. Maybe there's a data set associated with it. There's a TensorFlow model, and there's an Shiny app, and all these things are aligned with that. And I can, I can come in here and I can search for things. I can say, well, I only want the things that are highly rated. Okay, well, these are the things that actually got lots of positive ratings. This particular Power BI dashboard, it classifies with that. Or I can say, I want things that have a higher engagement, things that people are using actively. So I can use that slider. So very quickly, with just a little bit of searching and filtering, I've been able to really understand all the assets that are available, all the different, irrespective of type, around a particular goal that has been identified. And then that's been tagged. I see different metadata associated with that, and then be able to go to that. So that's a key. That's kind of the key things that you enable through a portal. It's simply not possible if each of these things are living inside of their own silo, right? So the same idea, right? If I go into the Jupyter Notebook for a moment, I can see here some specific additional information. So things like, what's my model classification? It's a regression model. Where's the training data for this? What model type? These are examples, but obviously any kind of metadata that you might want to provide an analyst or business user that's looking at the information to understand what they should be doing, how they should use this. And then again, it's one click away. If I click on this, I can be taken into either sort of something like this, where here's the actual Jupyter Notebook, right, that I can work with and interact with right here. I'm not even taken out of the portal for this case. Or if it's something that is completely outside of the portal, I can be taken to that location. So for example, I have this TensorFlow model here. So I can see, here's my definition of that. Here's the model classification training data, some model type information here. And when I click on this, I can be taken to in this case, it's a TensorFlow hub that contains this information, but really it can be any place you have in your enterprise, any place that's URL addressable where you're keeping your models, whether it's a GitHub repository or some kind of a more advanced management application. You can take them directly into that experience. And the same thing applies if you look at things like, hey, well, what are my data sets that are available? Well, here I've got a wine quality data set that I want to be able to, that might be useful to me. Well, great, I can link that out to wherever I'm keeping my data set. So in this case, as an example, I'm going to an OpenML catalog that has, here's my wine quality data set, here's my features associated with it, qualities, etc. So these are just examples of the tools. As Mike said, there are many, many tools that people use in the enterprise. And that whole idea is to just stitch it all together and surface it all under that single pane of glass. And then enable these capabilities for people to discover content, to do things like provide feedback. Like, okay, I'm looking at this Shiny application. That's great, but maybe when I want to be able to tell the author what do I really think about it, like it'll pop up here that says, how likely would I be to recommend this to a colleague? So I can generate kind of NPS type scoring data that I'm collecting from these for any application. And then I can also get very specific feedback, right? I can say this would be even more useful at a county level. Right. So, and then now that information is shared with the author of that content. You don't need to go out and survey people manually through SurveyMonkey or whole focus groups or whatever. The platform that delivers all this content, should be able to just collect all of that information for you, so that as a content publisher, you understand quickly what kind of feedback people have left and how you can improve in what you're doing. Also, equally important, if I've published a bunch of content, models and apps or dashboards, whatever it is that I published for my users, if I'm going to generate value, if I'm going to maximize value, as Mike pointed out, I really need to understand, how is this being used, right? And so we have the ability to measure that as well. And so if I kind of give you a sense of that, there's a content center here. I can go in and I can look and I can understand across the entire portfolio of content that I published, who are the users that are engaging with that content, either whole categories of content or specific items. So I can see who those users are. I can also see which content is most popular, what's getting the highest level of engagement, what's increasing in engagement, there's increasing popularity here. So that's great. That's very helpful. And where is it that we have unused content? So maybe I published some models or I published some dashboards. Nobody's really come in and taken a look at that. Well, that's maybe I need to promote that. Or maybe these are things that were published 6 months ago or a year ago, multiple years ago, and they're no longer relevant because they've been obsolete. They're obsolete. They're replaced by new visualizations, new models that are much more useful. And so that's great. I'll retire those from the portal, right? And then what's kind of coming down in popularity. So all this gives us a lot of insight into how to manage that portfolio of assets that I've published. And then I can even understand for a particular asset, who's consuming that model and how that consumption is happening over time. So here you can see there's a little playback visualization where I'm looking at, for this particular asset, here are the people, how often are they coming in? There's these users that are coming in and using this asset every day. There's other users that, looked at a long time ago and even going out 30, 60, 90 days, they're no longer using it. So maybe it was useful for, or interesting initially, but, didn't have really sustained value. So this is particularly important for any kind of visualizations or things where you're really expecting people to come back to that content time and time again. But even for models, it's really helpful to understand are people coming in and accessing it at all, right? Is it getting any kind of usage? And if you make those access points come through that universal portal, then you're able to measure all that and understand how to take action. And then finally, what I want to show you before we kind of jump into questions is that there's a possibility to also, have a whole mechanism by which things can be published. Right. So if we think about you can generate, if you're going to have all this metadata associated with this content, it has to come in somehow. Right. And data scientists and the BI analysts and all the folks that are creating these assets, they're not going to want to be able to have to do a very cumbersome process to catalog all that information. They want to be able to quickly publish it. And so the way to do that is through a publishing workflow that is lightweight in the sense that it's low touch to the content publisher, but it captures all the necessary metadata required to be able to share that information out. Right. So to give you some examples, here we've got several different types of certification and publishing workflows. One person doing it, just moving it from a new to in progress to a complete state. There are other more complex ones that might have 4 or 5 different stages. And to give you a sense of how this would work, content center here. Then if we look at this just as an example, you might have something like this where you can imagine when there's a new asset, let's say that's published, it's going into your Shiny repository, your Tableau repository, Power BI, maybe synced from a data model, from a GitHub. You can get it automatically set up into a pending review status where somebody can come in and publishers notified, hey, this asset's available, come into the portal and publish it. And then they just really move it into in review status, just by simply clicking here, sending it to the user, you can assign it to somebody for someone else that should be working on it. And then once it's in the review status, they can just, clicking on it, they can add all of the metadata that's required in order to be able to have it be certified and have it be useful for people. So whether that be this detailed description, categorization, tagging that we looked at a moment ago, certification type information, any kind of custom metadata fields that you have associated with data classifications or containing PII data or model classification or anything like that, whatever's relevant to that content can be set here. And then, additional documentation, et cetera, ownership, all of that. And then that metadata then gets wrapped around that piece of content and is available for anyone that's consuming it. And everything you're seeing here is, a workflow is completely customizable. So the idea is you just built it around the content that's appropriate. If there's metadata that resides in other places, whether it's in a data catalog like a Calibra or Elation, or whether it's spreadsheets, all that should also be able to, can be brought in automatically and synced up with that content. So the end result then is that piece of content that is sitting in a single portal that can be easily accessed with search, and that has all of the metadata wrapped around a name, description, tagging, et cetera, with definitions for that and everything that users need to be able to understand how to use that content, and is managed through engagement tracking, through feedback, through all the mechanisms that tell you both the quantitative feedback around usage, how often are people using it, and the qualitative. What do people really think of it? What's the feedback? How is that performed? So with that short demo, let's shift gears, and Mike, if you can come back on video, let's take a look and see if there's any questions, and we'll answer some questions with the remaining time. So let's look at, I'm looking at this. There's a question that says, can business users connect to DB and build queries to visualize results instead of asking them to write SQL queries? So Mike, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I mean, we typically find business users are not writing SQL queries. They're using assets that are being built by other parts of within the organization by the data science team and the BI team.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need, they don't need to write SQL queries. I mean, they can be using BI tools to generate SQL queries, so absolutely no reason necessarily to have to do that unless there isn't something that's available off the shelf at all where they have to start from scratch. But in general, no, they don't have to write SQL queries. They can use tools to generate that for them.
Okay. Great. There's another question here. What tools do you recommend to implement such analytics marketplaces? Some of those capabilities might be able to be implemented through data catalog tools like Relations, but probably not all of those capabilities are described, but it seems at least part analogous to data catalogs. So I mean, I think it'd be interesting to hear from Mike, from you specifically around just the general tools that you see largely used in the enterprises, pull things together. From our perspective, there's a you want to pull together the strategy with the technologies that you have, right? And it's understanding where all this exists, and then pulling it together. Sometimes there's gaps that need to be identified, but I know you work with a lot of organizations to identify
Yeah,
gaps.
I mean, I think generally speaking, there's been a gap in this marketplace. Obviously, Metric Insights is in this market to try and fill that void. There's one or two others in the space. I suppose in the area of data science, what you are seeing is the emergence of model registries, but then again, if you've got multiple data science workbenches, for example, going on, you're working on multiple clouds, you might find there's a model registry on AWS, there's another one on Azure, I mean, so I got multiple model registries, and in a way you still need, something over the top of it in order to be able to kind of show stuff. And so I kind of think that that is that integration between model registries even and something like Metric Insights that would also help in order to be able to see across the range of development activity going on in multiple platforms, on multiple clouds, on premises, or even at the edge. And so I think that's needed. I have to say at the moment, what's becoming clear to me is we are moving towards distributed development, increasingly so. We've gone from sort of centralized. I mean, think back to the data warehousing started. It was centralized IT built it. Centralized IT did the ETL. Centralized IT built the reports. What's been happening over the years is more and more of it's pushing out all the way out, including data engineering going all the way out, including your self-service BI, including data science. And as more and more of that development spreads out and we upskill the business professionals to do all of this stuff and break the mold between the kind of central IT and the business, the them and us. It's just us, So if anything, central IT is kind of been dispersed into the business units to upskill them and get everybody on that level. That's clearly going to indicate that more and more of these artifacts are going to get created, and we'd better be able to organize it. Because especially if different parts of the business are, got their own autonomy with their own budgets and spending stuff to go and try and accelerate what they're doing in their part of the business, you've got to be able to coordinate and organize this. And so I'm not a great fan of just swinging a pendulum from centralized to distributed. I'm a fan of federated, where something's sitting on top of this, looking down on it and organizing it and coordinating it and saying, yeah, okay, go ahead and build this stuff around your organization, but align it, bring it together, because this is what we're trying to achieve, which is why I really emphasize the whole sort of strategy alignment thing with respect to all of this. And you, Marius, talked about tagging those artifacts around that. I think that really matters, because it allows top-down understanding of what's gradually being built and deployed, so that they can clearly see that the money they're pouring into all of these initiatives is starting to bear fruit, and I think that to me is going to be critical going forward. So I think there's a big gap here. You could argue, well, will data catalogs not do all of this stuff? Well, yeah, but they're really not. If that's going to happen, that's a number of years away yet. Right now, data catalogs are very, very focused, in my opinion, around data governance, which is a big problem. Where I am here in Europe, data governance is a really big deal, perhaps more so than I would say in the US. But I think nevertheless, as state level legislation happens across the states, I mean, I'm thinking it's hard enough doing GDPR in 27 countries, all doing the same thing, but 50 states with different privacy laws. I'm thinking, God, you guys are crazy, right? So, but if that happens, and then you take other parts of the world, Brazil, Japan, Australia, whatever, coming out with their own legislation, governance has become a big deal. And for global businesses, they have to be compliant in multiple geographies with all this stuff, and so it ratchets up in overall importance. And people want to share data, but you got to share in a compliant way. We want to share these artifacts, as you mentioned. Maybe some of them give you access to sensitive data. You've got to do it in a compliant way. So governance is a big deal. And I think the data governance problem is a lot of going on right now, but that's going to have to filter all the way up into all of the other artifacts that you demonstrated on Metric Insights there, with the to be able to govern all that too, and make sure that everything is running compliant. So let's look right out on the horizon here. There's a long way to go on all this stuff, and so, but it's got to come together. But I think from a commercial perspective, if you're an executive really trying to use this to drive value, what they want is to switch from the last decade, which was a development decade, let's face it, I mean, to this decade, which was an industrialization decade. Put this stuff to work and speed it up so that I can get this stuff out more rapidly, get it deployed more quickly, get it to work, and start doing what we paid the money to build it for. We really need that to happen in a more standardized way. And if you're going to industrialize anything, you can't always say everybody has the freedom to do whatever they want in all tools. I mean, if you were to say, well, whatever piece of equipment you want in a manufacturing production line, and we'll figure it out while it runs, that's not what happens. What happens when you industrialize manufacturing process is there's some degree of standardization that has to happen in order to speed the whole process up. And I think that's what has to happen here. If we really are going to accelerate and deploy this stuff, we have to accept there's some degree of standardization. Yes, go build in all the tools, but for goodness sake, don't deploy all kinds of tools so I can't see what's happening across the business. I need to be able to line this up and get it moving. And I think that's really important. Even going through the approval processes and whatnot that you mentioned, and being able to see how effective this stuff is. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, people want to see improvements in business performance.
That's well said. So I think we're pretty much at time here. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your insights.
Thank you,
and have a good day, everyone.
Okay, bye.